Alright, let's get going on this. I've sent my messages and we should be able to start streaming now. Alright, we're back. We are COMP123 in the summer 2019 semester at Centennial, and we're week 13. It's the last week of classes. We've got our last lecture today. We're talking about a couple of topics. One of them is, kind of prepared this little PowerPoint. If you look online, there's a PowerPoint called Additional Topics that we'll be dealing with today. I also made a couple of announcements earlier, and I'll say them again. So again, next week, your test is going to be held on Wednesday at this particular time slot. So it's going to be between 4:30 and 6:30 p.m. next Wednesday. So today, it's what day is it today? Is it 7th? So 14th. The 14th of August at 4:30 is when your exam comes. Now your final test is going to be based on, now this is for this group, for section A. Guys, whatever you do next week, don't be late, because I'm not going to repeat myself. Whatever it is, try and be a few minutes early, like 10 minutes early as an example. Wait outside. You'll only have 100 minutes to complete your test. There won't be more time than that, right? I'm going to split you up, and the thing that I talked about on the test is that there won't be any communication. So if you have a watch, any kind of smart watch, I want you to take it off when you come into class. I want you to take off or put away your smartphones. So they're going to be off the desk in silent mode. So they won't be allowed for you to ring or whatever. No messaging apps, no Discord, no Slack, no Messenger of any kind, right, will be allowed. You'll be allowed to look at my code, your code. Don't look at other people's code. You'll be seated separately, so different spots. You won't be allowed to be sitting next to each other. That's what's happening next week. Again, for you guys, on this Friday, we're going to be building our template together. Yeah.
Can we look at our own code from Github?
Yeah. Your code, my code, you can look at. You can even look at your assignments, assignment 4, assignment 5, no problem. All those things are fair game. PowerPoints are okay. No videos. Okay, you can't look at the videos. I kind of mentioned that a couple times, but it's impossible anyway to watch a video, right? You can Google stuff. I will allow you to Google things. If you want to do Googling, like you want to Google something and make it go, you can totally do that. But again, if you have to Google it, I mean, that's bad. You probably won't be able to, the timing won't allow you to do it. That's all I'm saying. That's why we're doing the whole template on Friday, and then you'll be ready for Wednesday, right? Remember, I'm not going to see you Monday, you guys, right? I'm only going to see sections B and C on Monday, right? So, now, here's the thing. Even if I give you your template and them their template, their template will be slightly different. It means that you won't be able to really help each other too much. There'll be some things that are the same, but because again, I'm not a machine. I can't completely do 3 different things. There's 100 of you, so it's hard for me. But the idea is that it'll give you a challenge. If you've done assignment 4 and assignment 5 on your own, then it shouldn't be an issue for you guys to do the test. It should be a straightforward thing. So there's no need to cheat. Okay? Cheating is not really allowed anyway, but people do it or try. And if you do, and if I catch you, that's a really terrible result because it's 0, right? And that's not worth it for this one. This is probably going to be the easiest test you've done. If you've done assignment 4 and 5, then the test will be straightforward. There'll be no problem, right? If you haven't done assignment 4 and 5, then the test will be horrendous. It'll be like a terror. You'll hate me, right? Because you just won't know what to do. There's just too many things to do, right? So things that we're going to do on the test that I know I'm going to talk about are things like there's going to be a splash screen. I'm telling you, you need to know how to do that. And I'm going to program that with you guys on during the template. During template day, which is going to be for you guys this Friday, add whatever you want on the template. But let's suppose you can't. Your template is terrible, or you just can't follow me. I'm too fast. Because I'm not going to record Friday or Monday, right? Then I will upload a template that's clean, that's relative to your class. It'll be up on eCentennial. You can download it and use that one if you want. But that'll be additional time. Download time, prep time, make sure you're ready. When you come to class on Wednesday, if you have a laptop, bring your laptop. If you're going to sit at a specific spot, make sure that you know where the template is so you can get going as soon as possible. I don't want anyone saying, I don't know what to do, right? That would be a terrible result. That means you didn't come on Friday. And if you didn't come on Friday, I'm not going to explain what to do. I won't. I'm just going to say, look, I gave you Friday, you didn't come. Here's the list of things that I want you to do. Go do it. And that'll be it, like any other test. Yeah?
The other Friday class, no class.
So the other Friday's class is up to you guys. What I was going to reserve it for is things like reviewing marks, right? If you wanted to have any questions, because your assignment 5 is technically due that day, I will still reserve it and come in. We may not hold class on Friday, but I will make office hours, so you guys can come in and I can help you out with any assignment questions you have. If you have questions about your exam. I also want to reserve it for, just in case, an hour or 2 hours for, let's suppose there's a catastrophe, you know, on Wednesday, then I have an extra slot for some select students with a really good reason to come in or whatever and talk to me about their exam. Okay, but that would be the only time that I would. That's all I'm doing on Friday. So if you don't want to come on Friday or you want to take that day off, and you have other classes you're studying for or other exams that day, because you may have other exams that day, it's okay. Go do it. I'm not going to be hurt if you don't show up that day. You're the only section that I have on Friday, so I'm totally cool with it. If no one is going to show up, please guys let me know, right? Because I don't have to come in. So that'd be really terrible. I mean, I come in, it's like, you know, I hear crickets. I'm going to leave, right? If I don't see anybody like in 20 minutes, see you later, right? But that's it. So that's what's happening next Friday. All right, so let's move on. So we're going to talk about additional topics. We're going to start with a Visual Studio application. Let's open that up together, please. Right? So some people keep asking me, what's going to be on the exam? Am I going to have a database on the exam? And the answer is probably not. And the reason why probably not is because it takes too long. Right? Not because it's I don't want to test you on it. You have assignment 5 for that. It's just that I can't see us doing a database in 100 minutes. Database integration. However, loading and saving, that's fair play, right? Yeah, that file stuff is totally fair play, and we can totally do that. Okay, let's do this. File, new, project. And again, what I want to look at is my desktop, and I want to look at COMP123. And I want to do a couple things here. So it's going to be called COMP123 Summer 2019, and it's lesson 13A for you guys. However, I'm going to call this part 1. And notice that solution name, it won't be part 1, it'll just be 13A. I'm going to have several projects in my solution this time around. You guys should know how to do that. I'm using .NET Framework 4.72. Some people were asking me today about their database. They can't see the options for the EF framework in their database. You need to update your Visual Studio and download the piece parts you're missing if you don't have those options. I'm using Git repository again, and I'm going to press OK. It's going to create my project. So one of the things that we've had trouble in the past is every single time I start off with a project, I always have to do the same old things. I have to go here, and then I have to go up here to my properties, and I'm going to change the font, and usually I change something like 20. Let's just make it 14 today. So I change the font to 14 or something, and then I'm going to go down here and change this to 800 by 600. And if I had to do this for every single form in an application, wow, what a pain that would be, right? I mean, it is a pain, right? That's number one. And also my default start location, if we made it center screen, and you know, all that kind of stuff. Let's change the name of the form. So the name right now is Form 1. Let's rename that one. So I'm going to rename this thing. Let's call it Master Form. So imagine if we had the opportunity to do inheritance with visual inheritance as opposed to just regular type inheritance. So here's my master form. Now master form is nice, but remember we want to try and go away from doing this way. For the new people in the room, what I want to do is I want to right click on my project and I want to add a new folder and I want to call it views. And we talked about that for the last couple weeks, right? Because it doesn't make sense that our master form is out here. I want to put it inside another folder so we can kind of like encapsulated in a views folder. So I'm going to kind of drag and drop this master form inside views. It says one or more files are moved. Are you okay? Yes, move it. But however, one thing to note is when you do it this way, when you move it this way, and if I press F7, because I had this question just now, I didn't do it this way for the other classes, that the namespace is incorrect. It should say COMP123 S2019 lesson 13A part 1 dot views, because that is the namespace we're in, views. At the same time, I also want to do the same thing. It's going to be an error because initialize component is part of the other partial class. So if I look at master form designer, we did this last time, you also have to change this namespace to views. And if you do that, then the error goes away. So again, I just did it in two places. One was masterform.cs, I made it views, and masterform.designer.cs, and I changed that to views, the namespace. And that's because I dragged my master form inside my views folder. My views folder, think about it as a module, right? I've got a new module called views, and I've got my master form in there. Okay? So that's good. I got my master form. But my program does not respond well. I mean, I can run my master form, but it'll look like this. If I click start, my program will run, and then it'll go, Why? Because it doesn't know where master form is. Notice that there's this little light bulb. We'll be doing this multiple times today. The little light bulb that pops up tells us it suggests, hey, why don't you add this using statement in here? And I'm going to do that. I'm going to click on this using statement, and it's going to add it at the top of my file for program, which adds a reference to the views folder so I can look in there. If I don't have this reference, I can't look in the views folder and it's not available to me, right? Also, because I'm going to add some stuff here, I'm going to make this public static, this class public and static, which we've done before. And now if I run this thing, you can see that it's just going to pop up my form as normal. One thing I do want to do that I forgot to do is I want to change the form name. So again, I'm going to go to the form, master form, the designer, and change my form name to here in the title bar, the text, to master form. Yay. Okay, so in other cases, in other non-visual formats, whenever you want to do inheritance, and this is the question I have for you guys, would I want to instantiate an object of type master form if my master form is just going to be something that I'm going to, derive all my other forms from? The answer should be no, right? I'm never going to instantiate an object of type master form. Master form is the master template, right? So it should be abstract. However, sadly, it won't allow you to do it very easily. There's some hacky stuff that you can do to make it abstract. I don't recommend it. I think you should just leave it as a non-abstract form. Once this form has been created, this form, the great thing about it is it'll allow us to inherit from other forms. However, there is something we need to do. If I want to add another form now, let's add in a start form. I'm going to right-click on my views. I'm going to click Add. I'm going to click Windows Form. And if I did this Windows Form stuff, it would fail. What I want actually is inherited form. Inherited form. This should be an inherited form template. And if I do that, let's just call this start form. And I click Add. And now, after I've built my form, it's going to say, hey, do you mean this one? Do you mean this master form component? By the way, guys, if you haven't seen this in the inheritance picker, it means that you didn't build the master form first. You have to build and run the master form in order for it to be available here. If you don't do it and it won't compile, then you won't see it in here. If I press OK now, then now you can see that I have a start form. And if I look at if I click F7 for it, look at this. It says that my start form inherits from not form, but actually my master form. Now this is a big pain too. Look at this. I have to do all of this explicit kind of namespacing. So I will just use it here. I'll say using COMP123 part 1 dot views, right? And then we can get rid of all this. This is just cleanup. That's what that is. All right, cool. So look, so we got this, we got views, and we're using this thing, right? Master form. In fact, you know what? Because this is inside views, you can probably just get rid of this altogether. But it's just showing you, right? All right, so cool. So what does this look like? What does start form look like now? And if you look at the designer for master form, it's like this, right? And for start form, it's also like this. It's perfect, right? In fact, every form I make is going to be exactly inheriting the visual styles from a master form, which is good, right? This is going to save us a pile of time. If I had 5 forms to make, I don't have to do all those fonts, you know, the stuff, the center screen, all those things. I don't have to do any of that anymore, right?
So if you change on master form later,
it changes, yeah, it changes, yeah. So that's the really good thing about it. However, if you do change anything on master form, the question was, what if you change master form, will it change? Yes, it will. However, one thing to note is you need to rebuild the master form because the reference is wrong at that point. For example, form border style, we left as sizable. If you want to change this from sizable to fixed single now, it says you must rebuild your project for the changes to take place. It's a warning, right? And so of course we're going to go back to build, rebuild solution, which rebuilds the project. And now if we run it, we should be able to not modify the size of my form. See, I can't do it, right? I can't. Other things, if I want to stop things from happening, here's the master form. I want to start the, oh wait, one more thing we didn't do. Of course this is working because start form isn't inheriting yet. Hold on a second. One more thing we forgot. A couple things. Master form also is, I want to take away the control box, the maximize box. So go down to the maximize box, set it to false, save it, and then rebuild my solution. Now, in my program, right now I'm using the master form. That's why it's working, okay? But I don't want to use the master form. I want to use my new form I made, the start form. So I want to say start form, right? And then below here, before my application run, I'm going to say start form, right? And by the way, this has to be public and static. My start form is equal to a new start form. And then in here, instead of starting a master form, I'm just going to call the start form that I just made with the lowercase s. Alright, so that's stuff we've done before, like a bunch of times, right? So you can see that I have a start form I've declared. Here I instantiate it, here I call it in my application run. Okay, that's what happens. You guys should be very familiar with this because we've done it many times. Alright, so now if I start this off, you can see now that my start form starts off and it inherits all the stuff. Oh, I got the minimize button, not the maximize button. Let's fix that. Remember what I have to do now. This is the test. Here's my master form. In my properties, I got the wrong button. Instead of the maximize button being false, I did the minimize button as false. I want that as true. Save it, and then I want to rebuild my project. And now I should start my solution, and I should have my minimize button, but not my maximize button. We're all good to go. So, pros of doing this. Pros. Good thing is, you know, now I've got my visual style. I can make 10 more forms, and they're all going to have the same, these attributes. The properties of my form are going to be retained. The same size, the same location, the same font size, the same background colors, whatever I want. It'll inherit all those things from my master form. Pro, that's the pro. Cons, I have to do this. I have to make the form first. I have to spend a few more minutes making the master form in order for me to have this thing. As well, what if my master form, well, I want to change it, I have to rebuild my solution so that it cascades, the changes cascade down, which is a con. It takes time sometimes. And I have to also mention a couple cons. Sometimes, for whatever reason, Visual Studio and Windows Forms fails to make the stuff up. It fails to update master form. Okay, just letting you know. There is another way we can do this, and we can. I'm not going to show you everything, but basically, because it's of time only. But basically, what happens is this project, if I go project properties here, notice that the application is building a Windows application. So this is creating an executable file, an exe, right? Another option for me when I make my master form is I make a master form project. All it does is create a master form, all right? Think about this. Instead of making an executable, I make a DLL. I make a class library, right? So class library. When I make a class library, that's just an option. I can do console application, class library, or Windows application. Right now I'm making a Windows application, but if I make a class library, it creates a DLL, and if I take that DLL and point to it with that inheritance picker that you saw earlier, instead of, and so I can click browse instead of like selecting the one I had, that works a little better. That works better. Okay, so that's another option for me. All right, but I'm not going to do that because, you know, it's another layer of complexity for you guys, but that's definitely an option. All right, here's something that I also want to show you. So originally, in the way it was done before, and this is the master form. By the way, the start form by default says master form on the top too, right? Look, master form. It inherits everything, right? If I want to change the start form, I want to change the start form so it has different properties. I can do this, right? So I can go again, properties. I can go to the bottom. I can change the text from master form to start form. You can see that that's going to change. And if I run, compile and run, everything's good. I get my start form. So this is what you could have done with master form back in the day, and sometimes this is a little finicky today, right now in 2019. But back in the day, not only did it inherit styles, but also controls. So let's suppose I want to take a common control here like a button and drag and drop it on this button. And this is on the master form itself, all right? Not on the start form, right? So, and then let's make this button called next button. Let's just suppose I made a button called next button, and it was called next. Yay. I've got this button here. And let's suppose I put it in a particular position, and then I control drag over here and make another button. And instead of calling this next, we'll call it back. So I want to have a form that automatically has next and back buttons for whatever reason. So a couple of controls. Back button. Back buttons and labels and a bunch of other stuff are all inheritable. You can do it. One thing to note though is both the back and next buttons should be, the modifier should be, instead of private, it should either be protected or public. So let's make it protected. There it is. By the way, there's a difference between protected and protected internal, and I'll show you those two things. All right? Okay, so cool. So now I'm going to rebuild my project like I did before, rebuild my solution, right? And once I've rebuilt my solution, right, I rebuild all, then I should be able to run it, and I should see my controls. Oh, man. But this is what I was saying, right? Sometimes what happens is, just like this, even on the start form, you don't even see them. They don't exist, right? So you can try different things. You can try and clean your solution, which erases everything, and then you can try and rebuild from scratch. You can try that. Still nothing. Sometimes what works a lot is on the master form, you can change these from protected to protected internal, right? You can try different things. And then if you build, rebuild, and then run, sometimes they'll show up. Sometimes it'll show up for you right now, right? Works no problem, but not for me. And this is why I haven't asked you guys to do visual inheritance with controls, because it's intermittent like this. I'm not sure what the problem is in terms of why it works sometimes and not other times. And sometimes it works for me too. There's nothing I'm doing different. It doesn't matter if I change this to public, as an example, or internal, whatever. I've tried all these things. It doesn't really matter. I've also tried doing this, where I save everything. I save the master form, the design, and then what I do is I go to again, I go to build, I clean my solution, I rebuild my solution, and then I start, and even then it doesn't work, right? So that's why I've decided not to use them. But that's how we did it back in the day. We made kind of some controls, and then if you use the control, there'll be a little dot on the top left corner of the control indicating that it's an inherited control. That's all it is. Okay, pros about controls, if you can make it go. You got controls that every form that you create will have those controls on them. Cons about the controls. Every form you have will make those controls on them, and you may not need every control. You may have to hide controls because you usually can't get rid of them, right? So that's kind of a negative. All right, so let's get rid of these. I don't care about these things. And I'm just going to rebuild my solution and start my form, and I should still have the same form. Great. So questions about inheritance, pros and cons. What are the pros and cons of inheritance? Is that a hand? No? I guess not.
Oh, I made it work.
You made it work? How'd you make it work?
I copied the code for generating a button and I just pasted it in.
No. That's like a new button, right?
It says next button.
No.
No, it says next button.
No, no.
It's a type next button.
No.
It shows.
I like your.
And the dot is there.
I know. But don't trust it. So
okay.
All right. So next. All right. So this is the first one. Let's make another project, guys. New project. New project. Right click. I'm going to make an add new project. Guys, there's a lot of chatter in the room today. I can't talk over you guys. Add new project. Right. I'm going to make a new project now. It's going to be called COMP123 Summer 2019. All right, lesson 13A, part 2. All right, so this is a new project. I want to set this project as the main project. How do I do that? Right click and set a startup project. If you set a startup project, this will be the main project that starts up. So now you can see it's bold. This one is not bolded. So you can see this one is highlighted almost, like this is the one that's going to start. Okay, so we want to get rid of, knowing that I have to do all those things, the shenanigans that I had to do for the views folder, let's just get rid of this form 1 in my new project. Just delete it completely and make a new file, a new folder. So add new folder called views, just like we did before. And this time, knowing that we're going to need a form. And by the way, this is a new thing that I'm going to show you. We're going to make a new form, add a new Windows form, which we're going to call this form Parent Form. It's another thing we can do, another way of doing things. Parent Form. All right, we're going to come back to this in a second. I'm going to go jump to the PowerPoint. So you guys should have 2 projects. One project with that inheritance test we did with master form and start form, and a new project that's the active project right now. I've right-clicked and set as startup project, and it's got a views with parent form. Now this is a problem right now because in my program.cs file there is no parent form. It's only looking for form 1, which will fail, right? Let's make it look like start that one up. So I'm going to say something like this. It's going to be public and static. I'm going to start off this new start form, or sorry, parent form. So parent form, and then parent form. And of course, I need to make that public and static, public, static. And of course, it doesn't know what parent form is. Why? I need to set the views folder as part of the usings. And now I can go down in here and go parent form is equal to new parent form. This is just practice for you guys. If you've never done it before, I feel for you. But you guys should be able to do this and not blink, because we've done it lots of times. Right? Good, you're probably ahead. So now if you look at this, you can see that my parent form is here. All this stuff is good, right? And if I run this thing, it should still run. Yes? But I haven't configured it in any way. We'll come back to this. Let's leave it like this for now, and we'll come back to it after I talk about the PowerPoint a little bit. So why the PowerPoint? What are we doing in additional topics today? So one of the things we're going to talk about is scroll bars a little bit, and drag and drop, and a bunch of other stuff. Let's go to scroll bars. Scroll bars, if you have additional content on your screen, you can use scroll bars on your form to make a custom way of scrolling around your screen and moving the screen canvas around so you can see different content. Nice, but I'm not going to show you how to do it explicitly. If you want to do it, you can certainly look. The code is here, and it tells you what each of the properties do and what the scroll bar is, different parts of the scroll bar. Yay. Next, let's go to the drag and drop part. Drag and drop, I'm going to leave till last, right? What you need to drag and drop is 2 things. You need a source and a destination, right? Somewhere to drop from and a place to drop to. And what you need in the source object is to use the do drag drop method that's part of every control that we have in Windows Forms. Do drag drop is part of it, right? And then you say, okay, I want something to drag. So in this case, the name text box will be the thing that I'm going to drag. Some kind of desired drag effect. So I'm going to drag move or copy or none. Those are the options, right? And then I use an event handler, which is a mouse down event. So when I click down on that source, it activates the do drag drop event, and I can move it across, right, to whatever I want. I use this format. It's pretty straightforward. Then on the target object, I need to allow drop property to set to true, right? And then I need two more events. One of them is the drag enter event, where I create the effect that I want, move, right? And the other one is the drag drop event, where I let the mouse button go, and then it converts the data that I get from one object to the other, converts it to string, and moves the data across. That's what it does. Okay, so there's a lot of moving parts to it. We're going to get to this last. I just wanted to talk about the format of this, but it's very useful for us, and we will be using it in our test. Worst case scenario, I will code it for you. You just have to use it. All right, but I will show you how it works today if I can. All right, validation techniques. We've been doing things like with try catch blocks, and we also did things with the little mini keyboards. We talked about that, but there are other ways of doing it. You can use something called an error provider, and what the error provider does is, and I think some of you did it actually with your assignment 4 for your BMI calculator. What it does is you set up a new error provider, and you can set up a control that is that causes validation, and once it causes validation, it checks to see that the error provider is satisfied. So it's saying, hey, so if you modify this code, it's got to compute to this. As an example, and here's an example of this, where I have a decimal that I want to multiply, and I want to convert. I want to try and convert this thing to a string, and all that kind of stuff. And if it fails, it's gonna activate the error provider. And the error provider, as soon as you drag and drop it, it's actually a component in your form that shoots in a label, a temporary label that appears on your form that flashes red. It's kind of interesting. Unnecessary for us though, because we've kind of circumvented that with the way we've done it. And I highly recommend, from a user experience perspective, reducing the amount of controls the user has and inputs, because the biggest problem in our Windows forms, like I said, is the user, right? The user can mess you up. By the way, I've been marking assignment 4. Some of it's messy. I have to be nice to say that. Some of the assignment 4s that I've marked, I can break them, right? Like they crash, right? So you saw one of the ways I did it. For example, and there's nothing you can do, guys, at this point. You've handed it in. But here's an example. You know, I've converted to kilograms, and then, you know, you don't allow me to, to use that, and I convert back. I just click back on my radio button to pounds, and then I press calculate. And now kilograms was like, I don't know, something like 95 or something, and then now it converts to pounds, and meters converts to inches. So instead of like 1.8 meters, it's now 1.8 inches. So 1.8 inches with a bunch of pounds, it's like 21,000 BMI, right? Yeah.
You shouldn't let it convert it automatically. You should just type it in again.
Well, there's a couple ways. I think from a user experience, converting automatically would be good, right? However, the other way, the easier way to do is just wipe it out. When you click the change, it just clears everything. Because that's the better way to do it, because that way you don't take a chance. Maybe the user doesn't want to convert. But converting is a neat idea. I'm just letting you know that's one of the errors I found. The other one is I can break because people haven't done their due diligence, and they haven't stopped me from entering garbage data, right? Which I can totally do easily. So, and the other one is, I mentioned this earlier to the other classes. I also noticed that there are some people that didn't put their internal documentation, like for example their header and that kind of stuff, and other internal documentation. Guys, that thing is worth 6 marks. So you worked really, really hard on doing splash screen and different effects and blah blah, and then you've lost like 6 marks because you didn't do any internal documentation, right? So
basically summary boxes for
Well, all the stuff we've been doing, like, so things like what it says in the requirements. Always read the requirements document, guys. So if you look at the requirements for in week 8 for a BMI calculator, one of the requirements that it had was internal documentation here, right here, and it says that you need to put in the author's name, the author's student number, date last modified, and people didn't do this. They thought it's not important somehow, or it wasn't just one person, by the way. It was lots of people.
I put that.
Yeah.
Question.
Yeah.
So internal documentation, like yes, the DIA was a diamond force, right? But suppose you have suppose for like you have 10 forms, you have like 10 different CSW, you have to put on.
Copy paste. Copy
So
paste.
you have to put on.
Yeah. Copy paste. It's required. Copy paste. Right. For assignment 5, you need it. So follow the documentation. It's an extra. Remember, I told you assignment 5 is long. It's not hard, right? So what it means is like there's a lot of details. Go through the details. Make sure you hit all those details before you hand it in. If you've already submitted, you can resubmit. It's not due till next week Friday, so you have lots of time. Okay, so that is the error provider. No, it's due next Friday.
Oh, okay.
Right? Well, if you've already done it, that's fantastic. Just
Done half of it.
awesome. That's fantastic. But what I really want to talk about here is multiple document interface. So far, up until now, we've been using something called a single document interface. So I have one form, and then each form has its own functionality. But that's not how a lot of stuff works. And a good example of this is if I ran something like Adobe Fireworks. So here's an example of an application, Adobe Fireworks. Adobe Fireworks can have a bunch of tabs on the left, as an example, and toolbars and menus. And then what I can also do is I can make a new document, and you can see that I have this new document, and maybe I make another one. And here's another document, right? And I make another one, and here's another document. And this is a multiple document interface, right? A lot of code editors are like this too, right? A lot of these kind of Visual Studio is kind of like this too in some ways, right? Well, this is what the kind of application we're going to see more often than just a single form that pops up. That's not normal, right? So let's make that. How does that look? Well, we've already started. Let's go back to Visual Studio now. We've already started. We've made our parent form, but there's a couple things we need to do. First, let's go back to properties of the parent form. If I go back to my parent form designer.
My parent form is acting funny because it's working without me referencing the views.
I don't know.
Without me using views, it's still working.
Because the namespace in your form,
Yeah.
in your parent form is views. It's not views. It's normal. Take the namespace.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah. All right. So start position is center screen, like we talked about before. This should be called parent form, right? And we want to change the font for the parent form. Let's make this 14 again. One thing to note for this one is we don't want to change the control box. I want minimum, maximize, and X, the exit. I do want to change this to 800 by 600 or something that's similar that'll work on your system. You could, maybe for you have a better resolution is 1024 by 768. For me, I'm broadcasting and I'm on the screen here, so I can't do it. But something that makes sense. 800 by 600 works for me. Okay? But I'm not changing a couple things. I'm not changing the form border style from sizable. I want it to be sizable in this case, right? One thing I will change is this one, is MDI container. Multiple document kind of container. That's what it is. I'm going to change this from false to true. When I do that, it looks like this, guys. It looks 3D, right? And it looks like I can put stuff in here. And in fact, I can. Hey, in a multiple document interface like this, I want to have a menu, chances are, and a toolbar, maybe even a status bar. We haven't talked about status bar, but I'll talk about it really briefly here. So in the toolbox, I'm going to go to menus. Here's menus. I'm going to drag and drop my menu strip, right? And in my menu strip, I want to select standard items. So boom, I got my standard items selected. And I'm also going to include a tool strip. And I'm also going to include standard items. And why not, let's get a status strip. And a status strip, I want you to think about what it is. It's like another toolbar, that doesn't have any icons, but allows you to put a bunch of labels in there. Let's add a label. So if you go down here, you can see that I want to add a status label. Down here, I'm just going to add a status label by just pressing this, status label. And I want to change the name of the status label to like, where it says toolstrip status label 1. Maybe this is like the status. Well, actually, I'll leave it the way it is. One thing I want to change is the text of the status label to text, to status. So it says status on it. And if I run this thing right now, if I run it, it should look like this. Right? So again, I've got my status down there. By the way, status bar, really great place to say saving document, save document, document failed to save. You know, all those kind of things. You can do all those things in the status bar, right? I can store things like my timestamp, date, if I want to. Any other kind of indicators or feedback for the user, you can show on the status bar. It's a really good thing, okay? But I have all these things. None of them work right now because I haven't programmed any of them up. Let's add a couple of more menu items, okay? So right now I have help, tools, edit, and file, just like Microsoft gives us, right? File, edit, tools, and help. You can see that those are all up there. I want to add another one called window. And you can see that window comes before help. Let's just drag this before help and after tools. I'll be okay. Right? Window, help, and one more called view. Right? The view menu. The view menu comes after edit. So put it on top of tools like this. So now it's file, edit, view, tools, window, help. Okay. So what the window is going to do is going to provide us a listing of all my child windows. That's what it's going to do. It's going to show all my child windows in there, right? And the way I can activate that is if I click on the menu itself, this menu, you can see that MDI window list item is part of that menu. Again, slowing down, right? I have my Windows menu that I made, right? This is inside of an MDI parent document. That's what it is. If I click on the menu, it gives me another option called MDI window list item. If I click in here and select window toolstrip menu item, that is where a list of all the windows associated with this parent form are going to appear automatically. I have nothing to do. Next, let's make sure that I have this new item has an event. Double click. And let's get rid of master form for a second. And a bunch of other stuff that I have up here. In fact, let me just close all these down for a second. One more time. Close all. Yes, save all. And go back to my solution. Sorry. I had a lot of windows open. I want to look at this parent form again. So one thing I've got is this. I did this part. I also want to do the same event for this icon. So I don't want to double click here. I want to click it once. I want to go to properties. I want to go to this lightning bolt. And on the click, I want to choose the new toolstrip menu item click event for this one. This should follow file. File new. If I double click there, it creates an event. And now this icon also creates an event. Same event. Alright, also one more. On exit, if I double click, I should double click on exit. And on exit, let's just finish this. I normally put application.exit, but I don't have to do that here. Because if this is the main form that starts, all I have to put is this.close. Because this.close will shut down the form, and because it's the main form, it'll shut down the entire application. Alright, so we've done our prep. Let's test it. Let's make sure we test our prep. So we come up, right, kind of go to here, File, New, nothing happens. Window, I don't see anything. File, Exit, should close your application. And no errors. Excellent. Are you with me?
Yes.
If you're not, and if you're not used to my speed, I'm sorry. I don't want to say that. No, I didn't say it. You said it, not me. Right? Parent form. Alright, so now parent form. I've got my parent form working. Are you good? Can I show you anything else before we continue? Because I want you to be part of this.
Yeah, the file exit. So you just do file and double click and exit.
Yeah, and then just put this that close.
The application close.
No, or you could, but you can just put this dot close. Actually, application exit will work,
Oh,
but
yeah.
you don't have to, because this dot close closes the main form. There's only one form. It closes everything, right?
Yeah,
so it does.
So my window also doesn't have anything under it.
Okay, maybe you want to give him a hand.
Yeah.
All right.
Too behind on that.
Next, I want to make a new form. Okay, let's do this together. Sorry, let's do this, right? Views, right click. I want to add a new Windows form. Okay, now this would have been awesome if I had a master form to do here, but I don't, right? So I have to do all that stuff again. All right. That's why I think visual inheritance is pretty good for that one thing. I'm going to click Windows Form, just Windows Form, and instead of putting Form 1, let's call this the child form. Child form makes another form inside views. Great. Let's make this child form different. All right. So where it's different, I don't want my start position to be center screen in this case, right? It's a child form. I do want my size, my font size, to be something like 14 again. And I also do want my size of my form to be smaller than this. But let's not make it 800 by 600. Let's make it smaller. Let's make it 640 by 480. Let's try and make a form size that can fit inside my parent window to start. Okay? That's what I want to do here. So this is where this is different. Okay, cool. The other thing is that I have a lot of options, a ton of them, in fact, for my form border style. And we've only talked about a couple. Fixed single and sizable. There's also fixed 3D. It looks like this. Makes it look like there's a 3D border. There's also fixed dialog, which takes away the icon from the top left corner. There's also fixed tool window, which takes away the control box and gives us this little funky X, right? And finally, sizable tool window, which allows me to size my option. I'm going to keep this at, I'm going to put this back to fixed single, actually, sorry, sizable, because I want my documents to all be sizable. Why? Documents should be sizable. Think about the Fireworks example. I should be able to size those documents up and down, right? That's the idea behind them. They're not forms the way we've made them before, but they're other kind of documents. Now this is the idea that I have, but you may have a different idea when you make your MDI, right? Okay, cool. Now, this is the thing where it gets a little funky. Before, I told you that in my program.cs, I would list all my forms. Not so here. Why? Because my child form only gets generated inside of my parent form. Okay? That's what happens. So I don't need to list them inside my program.cs. In fact, it's wrong. Let me explain. This is how it should work. In my parent form, right, here's my parent form. I want to press F7 to go to the code again. When I click the new tool strip menu item or the new icon, I want to do the following. I want to say that child form, we'll call this document, is equal to a new child form. I'm instantiating for the first time, right? I haven't done this before for a while anyway, not since the beginning, right? However, this is what I want to do. I want to say that document.mdi parent is equal to this. So what I'm actually doing when I do this is I'm saying that, hey, my MDI parent property, the property of my document, I'm pointing to this parent form, okay? When I do that, I'm actually activating a setter. The setter adds my MDI child, the child, to a list, an array of forms, automatically, in the setter itself. It's happening. So as soon as I set the MDI parent, my child is listed or registered inside of an array, immediately. So I don't have to worry about keeping track of it and all that kind of stuff myself. I could, and sometimes I do, because I like to be, I don't know, I'm a control freak when it comes to, references. But that's just me. But you don't have to, okay?
So basically, it just automatically creates children in the parent?
No, when I create a children, when I create a child and I set the MDI parent,
Yeah.
it automatically registers that child as a child of the parent. Okay, next. So now I want to set the document title. So I want to say the document.text, right, is going to be equal to something else. It's going to be equal to document, right, plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever it is, however many children I have, and I can fix that, find that out by saying something like this. This dot MDI children dot, and again it's an array, so it's length, right? So this MDI children dot length, right, is actually going to say, hey, how many children do I have in, notice it's an array of forms, right? That's what it is, an array of forms. And I want the length of that array, so if it's one child, if I add a child like this the first time, my array length is 1. Therefore, it would be document.text is going to be document 1, right? And then what I do is I'm going to show my form, document.show. And this displays my form inside of my parent. Because I've set the MDI parent to this, it always displays the form inside there. Got it? So pretty simple. That's what it does. Pretty simple in terms of what it is. If I press play now, and if I click this new button or this file new, then I get this. And if I click it again, I get this, and this, and this, and this, and this. And you see about a bunch of forms. And if you notice here, under window, I have, because I set the MDI to this, I have all these forms here. Right? Take a look. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And I can switch which one is on top. I can switch from window to 2, or to 4, or whatever one I want. Why is this good? It's really good because, and if I look, might as well. If I add one, I can see. I'll keep adding them in. Why is this really good? It's really good because I can have as many as little or as many as I want, and they have the same controls. I can maximize, or I can minimize, or I can close them up. Right? Alright, here's something else I want to do with the view menu. So let's go back to the view menu. So again, I'm going to go back to parent form. In the view menu, I want to add two things, right? I want to add, again, you can see that there's a combo box, right? A menu item, right? Here's a menu item. And notice on the left, this menu item that I want to add in, I want to call this thing so tool strip, and this will be status bar. Okay, so tool strip and status bar. Notice on the left, there's this little space, because if I go to my properties, I'm looking at the tool strip menu item, right? Okay, now it says checked false, check on click true. Right, check on click true. Let's make checked, both of them are checked. I'll make this checked true, and this one checked true. Checked true, and check on click true. Now I have something that looks like this. So when I click onto this, oops, I can choose my tool strip or my status bar. Now, what event do I want for this to happen? When I click on here, what do I want this to happen? This little check mark. Well, if you notice, right, so view, if I go to my selected thing, it says click, right? But there's actually something called check changed, which is what I want, right? When the check mark changes, right, I want to do something. So check changed, there it is. And the same thing for my status bar, check changed. And what I want to say is when the tool strip menu item is checked or it's changed, I want to show or hide, right, the item. So again, this may not be the right event. What do you think the event is? If I hide the item. So if I say something like tool strip menu, or I think it's called tool strip 1 actually. I didn't name it. Dot visible is equal to false, right? Well, it only happens once, right? That's not good. So that's incorrect if it was going to do that, right? But let's just try this and see if it works once. I'll just try it for the tool strip menu. I won't program this one yet. So again, if I go view, and if I click, notice there's little check marks there. If I click this, then the tool strip menu disappears, but now it can never come back. See? So that's not correct. Tool strip visible is equal to, well, remember, it's the ternary operator I can put here. I can put something that looks like this. If the tool strip is visible, right? Tool strip dot visible. If it's already visible, then make it false. Otherwise, make it true. Ternary operator, right? That's like saying if else. Let's try this and see if it works. So I'm going to go back to here and start this up. And again, if I go to view off, if I go to view on, and I can turn off and on items, right? And the same thing goes with the status bar, right? Here's my parent form. I can do the same thing. Instead of tool strip visible, I can do the same thing. I'll say that the status bar, right? Whatever my status bar is, status bar 1, is that what it's called? Actually, let's check it because I don't even know. Status bar properties. I didn't even check it. It's called status strip 1 for now. Because I mean, I'm not naming them. So status strip 1 dot visible is equal to, again, the ternary operator, status strip 1 dot visible. If it's true, then it's false. Otherwise, it's true. So it's kind of like toggle. That's what the toggle is, right? You can get rid of the space. Yep.
Will you better have all the controls going on already and just have a shared event to say which ones will off, which ones will go?
You can do that, yeah. There's a lot. You can store state too, on, off. But you already have that check state, right? If check state, then not. Then you can change check state to check change. Yes, you can. You can use a shared event handler here. But I'm not doing it. I'm being lazy. I'm just doing it really quickly. So if I want to turn off the status bar or turn it back on, I can do that. That's all. All right. So we have kind of a little application, and we've worked hard to make it work. And now you guys are going to really hate me because you know what? We can do all this in one click. But I had to show you the hard way because once you see the hard way, then the easy way is super easy and you're happy, right? So let's do this the right way. So I'm going to go back to Solution Explorer, right? And I want to just close off these forms for now. So I'm going to close all the documents. I don't care about those. So wouldn't it be nice if Microsoft made that for us? Well, yeah, but they did. So I'm going to right click and I'm going to go add new item. And under Windows Forms, you're going to see something called Mdi Parent Form. It's already done for me, right? And then we'll just call this Mdi Parent. We'll leave it as Mdi Parent 1. Sure, no problem. And then Mdi Parent 1 makes this. It's done. And if I was to run it, hold on a second. Hold on, this is the best. If I change this, so Mdi Parent 1, let's make this one parent form. So I will call this one Mdi Parent 1, and we'll copy this part down in here, and we're done. Hold on a second now, guys, and you'll see that when we do that, you get this. And guess what you can do with this? I can do this. I can add as many of these things as I want. I can go to Windows. I can even do things like cascade, tile vertical, tile horizontal, close all, arrange icons. I can also do a new item, and I can open a new file, open file dialog. All that work we did before. Save file dialog, it does save file dialog, and it even does exit, right? So it does it all. And by the way, it also does the view for my status. So I can say my toolbar, I don't want to see my status bar, I want to put all those back, it does all that. So MDI form, it actually does it for you. And why did Microsoft do this? Because remember that Windows Forms is for rapid application development, right? They don't want you to work hard, guys. We know, we make these applications, the MDI stuff all the time. Why should you have to code it from scratch like we just did for the last half hour, right? You shouldn't. You shouldn't waste your time. However, there are cases where you want to customize your form. But, I mean, really, at the end of the day, what I can do is, if I really want to customize it, just take things away. Take things away, add new things. It's a starting point. I can start with this faster. Now, here's something that's really weird. Where is the form that comes with my MDI parent? So if I open this up, if I press F7, you can see that all the code is here too, which is kind of cool. Take a look. I've got my show new form, and it says, look, I'm making a brand new form. It's an empty form, right? However, I could point to my child form. Let's do that. So let's change from form to child form. So child form, which is of type child form. Let's just do this, right? So now my child form is my form that I made, right? Everything else can stay. I can change this to document like I had before, right? And then when I run this thing, it looks exactly like mine now. Look, boop, document 1, right? Document 1, document 2. Here's all the documents. Let's tile them vertically. Right? It's a beautiful thing, guys. It's a beautiful thing, right? And I have very little to do with it. Like, which is always good to me, right? If I can take the lane of least resistance when it comes to coding something brand new and get it going. Remember I told you my philosophy is get it going, make sure it works, refactor, right? I don't do it the test-driven development way, which is, okay, I've got to do this, I've got to, do all the testing stuff. A lot of times it takes a long time, and when I'm prototyping, I find that test-driven development is too slow. If I'm making an application that I need to have it robust, it has to work, and it's got to be 100% error-free, and it's going to be super secure, I'm going to use test-driven development, 100%, because I need to make sure that everything's perfect, right? But here I can use ad hoc testing a lot of times to do a lot of it. However, the right way to do it is to use a hybrid of ad hoc testing and test-driven development like we talked about before. So notice all these things, they've created stubs for every tool, as well as this. This is the only thing you have to do for the cascade to happen. So literally you go layout MDI. This is an enumeration. You choose from cascade, tile vertical, tile horizontal, or arrange icons, and it's done. There's nothing for you to do. This all one line of code for all this stuff to happen, right? So it's really, really cool, and it's very useful. Questions around our MDI form. Now, for the test, I am not going to use an MDI form. Why? Because multiple document interface kind of thing. Sometimes I've found that on tests, people panic. You've only seen this thing one time. You don't have an assignment related to this thing, which means that you're going to see it again for the first time. And if you have to troubleshoot this thing, you might run into trouble. You might not know what to do, right? So it slows you down rather than helps you. So I've elected not to use the MDI and just use a form. However, I want to show it to you because they're going to ask you, if you're in an interview and they say, hey, do you know about MDI? You should say, yes, I do. Right? Because you know how it works. It works pretty good. I think it's the right way to go. And you can always combine stuff. Think about this, right? I have my multiple document interface. I have a parent form. I have some child forms inside, right? And have we ever not seen a wizard? Like some kind of wizard that comes up to enter data? Well, that's what we've been doing all semester. We've been creating these wizards that go from one form to the next form. Assignment 5 is that, right? It creates a wizard that allows you to select a computer. That's really what it is, right? So it's the same thing here. Some kind of batch file or a wizard of getting us through a series of data entries. And then we have our MDI, which houses all of our document and our data. And the wizard helps us get all the data that into the form, align it, put it in there, and display it in our document. Right? So kind of a really cool way of doing things. Okay. So we talked about MDI, right? And in here, if you notice, there's instructions on how to do it. If you forgot, you can always run through this on your own. And it tells you about how to do things like tiling and all kinds of stuff in terms of layouts, and even mentions the Mdi Parent Form that you can download and install. All right. We talked about toolbars and status bars before, so I'm just going to run through this really quickly. And status bars are a great way of giving feedback to the end user. Now, this is the one I want to use for the test. So, tab control. And you're going to go tab control, but we never did this. How are you going to use it for the test? Why? It's super easy, and it allows us to have one form on the test, not 5. Right? Let's talk about this. So, new project. Let's do this again. New. So again, I want to add new project. I want to call this COMP123 Summer 2019 Lesson 13A. Right? And then this is part 3. Alright, we're going to make this project the startup project. I'm going to right click here and I'm going to say set as startup project. There we go. I'm going to get rid of the form 1. Get rid of it. Remember we did this before. Get rid of it. We're going to make sure that these things are all closed. Close all forms, all documents. I'm going to add in a folder called views and make a new form. Add a new item, which is a Windows form. And we're going to call this Windows form main form. Again, you can combine all the things we talked about right here, right? And you're going to see this in a second. So I can have inheritance, I can have multiple document interface, I can have this thing that I'm going to show you right now, all in one, okay? So here's my main form. Again, I just need to do some minor configuration here. I'm going to do the same things that I've done before. I'm going to go, in this case, I'm going to change my font size again to 16 this time instead of 14, just to make it different. I'm going to go to change my size to 800 by 600. Alright, so same thing that we've done before. Windows location is going to be center screen. There it is. Right? And I'm also going to change back to the way it was before with our form border style. Form border style is going to be fixed single. Right? So that's most of it. And then the maximize box. The maximize box I'm going to make false. And then let's run this form and see if it works. Of course it's going to fail because it doesn't exist in the program.cs file because it's called main form. Let's make it work. So on the program.cs file, I'm going to instantiate or declare a new form of type main form. Main. So public static. And let's make this public static too, just to be clear. Public and static. Main form. We'll call it main form. Oh. And it's going to give us an error because it doesn't know where that is. I'm going to go to my little light bulb and click in using, and so add the main form using, so we can go to the proper module folder. That's what I'm doing. And just like we've done before in here, I'm going to go in here and go to main form. Arg. I know. It's terrible. New main form. And just take this main form thing and put it all in here. And test it. Let's see if it works. Boom. We're good. Right? Okay, so. We've talked about MDIs. We've talked about inheritance. Now we're going to talk about another container type that makes forms interesting. So in my main form designer, I want to go to my toolbox and I want to go to my containers, and now inside there you'll find a container that says tab control. Let's pull that in. Tab control. It does not have to take up the entire form. Let's put this tab control to make it look like this big. Alright, so what the heck is this thing? Let's go to properties. You can see that the tab control right now is called tab control 1. Let's change this to main tab control 1. Main tab control. How about main tab control? And then notice that I have two tabs, this tab and this tab. Let's add another one. You can do it here or you can go to the little smart arrow and do it there. Doesn't matter. So I have tab 1, tab page 2, and tab page 3, right? Let's rename these things. The way to rename them is you click here and then you click down in here. If I click down in here, right, and if I scroll down, you can see that there's a text area where I can rename this thing to, let's call this start. And let's go up where the name of the object is. We'll call this start page, and we'll click the next one. And then we'll click down in here and then rename it. So that will be main. And this will be the main page. And then we'll click the next one, click down there, and we'll call this end page. Again, I'm just making a convention for you guys to see these things, but really I'm just making 3 tabs, start, main, and end. And what you can do immediately without doing anything is if I run this thing, you can see that it goes start, main, end. And that's all it does. You can't see any difference because it looks identical, but actually what's happening is it's hiding and showing different containers. There's 3 different containers here. A start container, a main container, and an end container, all in the same form. So let's make our start container. Let's leave that blank for now. In our main container, let's add some stuff to make it different. So let's add some stuff that, for example, I want to go to common controls. Let's go to label. Here's our label. And let's add a text box. There we go. Here's our text box. And we don't care what it says right now. We'll just say there's a bunch of text boxes here. And what I want to do is control drag, so I have another one and another one. There we go. So that's what it looks like. That's for our main. And if I run this thing, look. If I run this thing, nothing in start, but in main, I got that. Right? Kind of cool. And then in my end form, let's just say that I have another layout. We can put another layout. So if I go to containers, I can go to my table layout panel. And let's suppose that I want to put a table layout panel that spans the bottom part of this form. There we go. And I want to put a few buttons here. So let's make it so that the table layout has an additional column, an additional row. And then what I want to do is edit rows and columns. And I can say that, well, these rows, there's going to be, each of these rows is 33%. 33.33 actually. And each of the rows is also going to be 33.33%. And now you see I have a little layout right here where I can drag and drop other objects. Like for example, in my common controls, I can put in a button. Okay? And I'm not going to even format this button much because this is not the exercise. I'm going to go here though, and in anchor, I'm going to change top left to center. And you can see that that spans, but it's not big enough for the button, so I'm just going to make it a little bit bigger, like this. And now I'm going to control copy and paste, like this. Bunch of buttons. So now I have a couple of tabs. I have one tab that's blank. I have another tab that says main, and a third tab that says buttons. Why is this good? It's really good because, so pros, really great because I have a lot of controls on one form. Cons, bad because I have a lot of controls on one form, right? It's kind of good and bad for the same reason. Why? Because I have a lot of stuff to reference in one form. But for you guys, for your test, you only have to worry about one form. That's the really good thing about it. Here's something else you can do with this thing. I can add some stability to this thing. I can add, these are changeable things, so they hide things. But I can also add other items that don't hide anything. For example, I can still add a menu. Let's add a menu. So there's a menu strip. And I can add common items again, standard items. And let's pull this down a little bit. And let's add a tool strip. And let's add common items. There we go. And let's pull this up a little bit. There we go. And let's add a status strip. And we'll add in a status label that we will call status at the bottom. Status. There we go. And now we have some items that are stable, right? Some items that make this form out to be a little nicer. Also, let's make 2 more buttons. So I want to go to Common Controls. I want to click Buttons. I want to grab a button, but don't put it in here. Put it down in here, all right? So the buttons, they're actually going to have some form here and function. One of them is going to be called the Next button. Oh. All right, and we'll just call this Next. Here we go. Line it towards the bottom. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to control drag this Next button so it appears over here on the left side. And this time we'll make this say back. And we'll call this the back button. Okay? Let's make sure they're aligned properly. It doesn't look like they are. Now they are. Alright, so what do I want these next and back buttons to do? When I click the next button, it's going to show the next tab. When I click the back button, it's going to show the back tab, the previous tab. Okay, but you can also replace the buttons so that they have arrows. They're just like arrows instead of like the whole back next thing, if you really want to. It's up to you, right? But the convention goes like this, right? If I want to go back, I press the back button. It's going to show me 1 tab back. But what about if I go back before the tabs start? That would be bad, right? So let's start with this one, back button. Double click. Alright, so how do the tabs work? Well, I know that I have something called main tab form, tab control, dot, and I want to know how many tab counts there is. So there's a tab count, right? But by the way, you can also, instead of tab count, you can also do tab pages. Tab pages is a collection. I can get access to each of the tab pages this way, right? So tab pages dot count. I know that there's a tab pages dot count. I know that, right? And I can say that, well, okay, if my selected index, which is my main control dot selected index, right? I can say that if it's less than this one, well, that would be great for going forward. But what about if I just say if it's not equal to 0, right? If it's not equal to 0, right? If it's not equal to 0, then what I can do is I can say that main tab control dot selected index minus minus. Pretty simple, right? Or the other way, my next button. I'm just making another event for my next button. I just double click there. If main tab control dot selected index is less than main tab control dot tab pages dot count minus 1, right? Because we want to make sure that, we want to make sure that we are indexing the right thing, right? Because count gives you like 1, 2, 3. How many do I have? And my selected index is 0, 1, 2, so I have to subtract 1, right? If that's true, then I can say that main tab control selected index, I'm just going to copy paste here, plus plus, right? So that kind of goes to the right, and then that kind of goes to the left. So I can traverse or navigate very simply, like this. Watch. If I run it now, I have the following. I can go next, 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 and then back, back. And it's a very quick way of navigating from one tab to the other. So why is this really cool? Again, you can combine the best of both worlds. I can put this form, I can put it inside of an MDI, I can have multiple ones of these. And these ones could all be profiles. For example, a contact profile for a user. A user could have username on the first page, start, name, you know, information, telephone number, blah, blah. On the second page, what services does he get from our company? On the final page, what products does he get from our company? On the one beyond, maybe another one, you know, how many, what his previous orders. I can show all his previous orders on that page. And it can be just for that client, right? And it can appear inside of that MDI. So kind of a cool thing. We're going to use it, but we're going to use it for another reason during the test. Okay? I won't reveal that to you right now. Okay, so cool. This is nice, but wouldn't it be nice if we had drag and drop working? I told you I'd leave that to the end, and here it is. All right? So I want drag and drop to work inside of my Start tab in here. Now, and then remember what I said for drag and drop. We need to have a source and a destination. That's what we need. Two things. Let's get that going. So, toolbox, and I want to get a label in here. All right. So here's my first label. I want to put it inside this. And again, from a properties perspective, we're going to call this thing. We'll call it source label. Okay, and we'll say that this is source. And then we'll get a text box. I don't usually like using text boxes, but this is a good use case for text boxes, right? Just make sure that they're aligned properly. In fact, let's make our source auto size false. I don't want my auto size to be true. I want my source so I can match the size of my label to my form, to my text box. Make sure it's kind of centered. There we go. Same size. And I want to control drag these ones over here. So control drag so that control drag copies. So it does. So here's my destination. Oops. So this one could be my destination. By the way, this text box, I forgot to call it, this should be the source text box. I forgot to do that. Source text box. And this one should be the destination or target label. Call it target label. And this will be the target text box. All right, target text box. Excellent. Let's put a value in the source text box for now, right? To make it easy for us, I'm just going to go back into the text area and let's put a value, you know, as an example of 39. Let's get a value. Yay. Don't worry about what it is. It's a value. 39. Maybe imagine if it was randomly generated, right? Some random number. For now, it's a value. What I want to do is I want to, let's just change this so it says target. I want to be able to go to the source and drag it into the target. Okay? Sometimes I might have multiple sources, right? And I want to have multiple targets, and I can drag and drop and select which ones I want, right? Okay, so source target. And now let's set this up. Remember what I have to do, right? If I go back to my PowerPoint, back up to where we were talking about drag and drop, I think it's way up here. Drag and drop requires the following: a mouse down event, as well as the drag drop method to be activated. So again, what I want with this thing is in my source, this one, I want to go to my events, and inside of my mouse down event, I'm going to double click. My mouse down event, what I want it to do is this. I want to say that the source text box, right, dot do drag drop. I want to set up what the source is. Well, of course, it's going to be my source text box dot, I can say selected text, or actually this will put text, and then drag. Look at it, gives me what I want to put in, the drag drop effects. Drag drop effects. Let's move it. Now I have other options. Look, I can link it, copy it, move it, none, or scroll. I want to move. I want to move this from one place to the other. Guys, that's it. That's the first part. A mouse down event that that basically says, hey, what kind of effect do I want? A move event. Where do I want to get it from? The source text box. Okay, good. Now is where it gets a little bit more complicated. I want to, on the target, okay, on the target, I want to go back to properties, and I want to allow drop. Now, someone earlier today said, where's my allow drop? What does it do? It's this. You have to set allow drop to true. Otherwise, you can't drag and drop onto it. Allow drop allows us to drop something from here to the target. Okay, good. Next, I need two events. Drag enter and drag drop. Those two events. Let's do them. So again, I'm going to go back to my event handler up here, my event list, and here's my drag enter. I'm going to double click there, and I'm also going to double click on drag drop. So again, go back, and where it says drag drop, double click. Two different events. Drag enter. Okay, how does drag enter work? Drag enter basically sets the effect. I'm going to use the E for the first time. So if you look back again at your documentation here, and this is what I recommend you do. So that was the source. Here's the target. It tells you what to do here with the target, and it says E.effect. So E.effect. What's the effect I want? Equals to drag drop effects dot move. Done. So the effect basically shows the effect on the next box. It actually shows an icon change. Your mouse will change to what looks like something that's moving. Right? And it actually sets up my text box, my target text box, to drop the effect. We're not quite done yet. This just sets up the effect. The final step is the drag drop step. The drag drop step is e.data.getData. Let's try this out. So what I want to do is I want to say this. I want to say that target text box dot text is equal to e.data.getData, and then again I want to put in format data formats. I can't remember. Data formats. I almost had it. Dot text. Right? Data formats dot text, and I want to convert this to a string. Okay, what does this all do? These are the three things. Let's look at these three different event handlers. One, my mouse down. It does. When I click down on the mouse, right? What it does is it basically copies from my source. That's what it does. It copies the source information. All right, and then I go over, I drag over, and when I enter the source, the target, this starts taking place. The move special effect. And then when I drag drop, when I let go of my mouse, it copies the data that I got from my target, converts it to text, converts it to a string, and then hands it into my target text box.text. Now, unless I tell it to, it's not going to delete it here. It's just going to move the data. Let's see what happens. So again, I want to go move this one. I move it, and you can see it says none because I'm in a non-droppable area, and I drop it in there, and then boom. But guess what? It copied it. It keeps it in there, and I can do it again, right? And again. If I only want to do it once, I can just delete it here for the first time, and the way to do that is to just say, as soon as I'm done copying, I want to do my source text box.clear. So that moves it from one. It looks like, it appears to be moving from one place to the other. So again, if I run this, it looks like this. Grab it, drop it. If I want to move it back, I got to do the exact same three events for the other text box, right? Which means this text box here, if I want to move the target back to the source somehow, right? I need to set up this as allow drop. That's number one. Second thing I got to set up is a mouse down event, right? For this one, I got to set up a drag enter and a drag drop event for this one with the proper stuff, and then I can move it back and forth.
But you need to have some sort of protection, because if
It will. Here's another thing. What if I have multiple sources and I want to move them, but I can only move one source in there. What should I do? Well, I can make it so that the target is read only, right? And I can take away allow drop. I can say allow drop false. As soon as I've dragged it in there, allow drop is false. It doesn't allow me to drag another source in there, right? I can do that too, which is a common practice, right? And then I could have a reset button maybe that resets everything back to where it was, but I need to know what the original values were somehow, maybe in an array, something like that, right? So these are the things that we can do with drag drop. I think drag drop is a really interesting way of interacting with forms, right? And notice we have 3 different things now. Here's the tab control in its full glory, right? I have start, main, and end. You can see that I have several buttons here, start, main, and end. And they have different uses, every one of them, and they're all on the same form. Every one of these things is on the same form, which is a lot of stuff. So, going back to assignment number 5, what I could have asked you to do is use this, right? I could add the entire assignment number 5 in one form, right? And that one form could have had all the components that I wanted, including things like saving, loading, and whatever. Inside of these areas here in our tabs, I can have its own menu, I can have its own look, its own feel, everything, right? I don't have to have an overall main menu like this. I don't have to do that. I can have each one of these things have a different look and feel to them, right? So kind of really cool stuff. Okay, now is a great place to put it up on GitHub because we haven't done that. So I'm going to go to GitHub, Team Controller, Team Explorer. I'm going to go to Changes. You're going to see that all the changes from each of my projects are listed here, right? Which is kind of cool. So GitHub keeps track of all your projects in your solution. I'm going to say added 3 projects. I'm not going to go into details here because we should have done this way earlier. Here, I'm going to copy them. I'm going to go to Sync. And this time I'm going to go to Publish. And I'm going to select Centennial and Publish. And what this will do is just put everything we did up on GitHub so you can use it on Friday if you need to. And we're done. Friday's class. Let's talk about that before we go. Friday's class. Please arrive on time. We only have 2 hours to put together a template, right? I haven't decided yet whether I'm going to start you off with a starter, like a starter template that you download first to go from, and then we'll move from there because we want to save as much time as possible and pack Friday in with as much as we can so we have a working template and kind of describe what I want to do for the exam ahead of time and what pieces are going to be left for you to do or parts that are going to be left empty so you don't know what's going to go in there. So when the exam comes, you say, okay, I want you to fill in those other places, other forms, right? What I will be using is the tab. One of the forms will have a tab control. There might be multiple forms, maybe one that doesn't have a tab control, but I won't make like 20 forms because this tab control allows me to do like one form with multiple items. I can test for things like labels, text boxes, opening, saving, all that kind of stuff in one form, right? And then there might be another form that does something else. Guaranteed on your final test, you will have a splash screen. We've been talking about that lots and lots. You will have file saving and loading. There's that for you to do. And how that looks. There might be binary instead of text. I'll decide how it looks in terms of your stuff. There will be a part for your section that's different than every other section. So we'll have to figure that out. Something that's different for you guys. And you know what? Since there's more gamers in your section, I'll maybe add a gaming-like element, right? Just because there's a couple people that are doing that. There's also some gamers in the other sections as well. Questions around the stuff we covered today. We covered additional topics, and this is our last lecture. So we covered things like stuff we haven't covered before. Visual inheritance. Will it be on your final test? It's not going to hurt you to use visual inheritance to make all your documents, kind of look similar, right? That's a good thing about it. We covered MDI. It will not be on your final test, but I want you guys to know about it. We covered tab controls, which will be on your final test, but we're going to build it together on Friday, right? So you're not going to be left alone, okay?
And drag and drop.
Drag and drop, I will do it if I have to again, you know, I'll set it up for you guys, because basically what that will be is one form that I will do, and then there'll be other forms that you're going to do. Okay? And then we'll start off everything. You'll have your template on Friday, and then you're good to go for Wednesday. Okay, any questions before we go? Thank you so much, guys, and we'll see you guys Friday for your template.